Welcome into the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com. I'm Tom Leach. Pinch hitting for Jim Goodman this week is Jonathan Fowler from Keeneland Select. And Jonathan, we had a good week last week. I had a couple of $20 winners, so I'm not promising that again, but that's always nice. A couple of $100 exactas that we had in there. So pressure's on to keep it going as we take a look at the 4 graded stakes at Gulfstream Park.
Yeah, and with these races with these 3-year-olds, you just never know when some horse is going to decide to step up and steal the show. So these are some great opportunities to make some money too.
Yeah, that's right. This is all 4 of these stakes are for 3-year-olds, either the boys or the girls. Well, we'll start with the Grade 3 Hutchison at 7 furlongs, and the field here could get small. I got a couple of horses cross-entered in the Holy Bull. Who did you take in the Hutchison?
Well, for what I'm looking at on Twitter, it sounds like the connections for Bluegrass Singer and Dom the Bomber are kind of leaning towards going to the Holy Bull. So that's kind of how I handicap this. In that instance, I'm still looking at Barbados for this race. He's been electrifying in his past 2 races. He broke his maiden here at Keeneland, then went in earlier this month and won the Spectacular Bid in very decisive form. Earned a really great 95 a speed figure rating. So he's going to be my top choice no matter what. The other horse that I'm really intrigued by is Richard the Great. He won his first 2 at Gulfstream, came back at Gulfstream Park West, had a very troublesome trip, and then couldn't really make up the ground in the end. So I'm going to see that he's going to come back, perform a little bit better, and then I'm going to always use XY Jet in my kind of probably exactas and tries with him because he's just been so consistent, and I don't see that ending anytime soon. So Bluegrass Barbados for me over Richard the Great and XY Jet.
I ended up taking Pletcher's horse down on the rail because the numbers aren't great, but this horse is eligible for an entry-level allowance race and off a long layoff, and Pletcher puts him in this Grade 3 stake. So just on respect for Pletcher, I'm going to take the 1 Stanford. And then I'm going to use it with Barbados and Richard the Great. And I also had Don the Bomb written down here. So if he goes, I would use him in an exacta box. But everything keys for me off Stanford. 8th race is the Grade 3 Sweetest Chant. They're on the turf for 3-year-old fillies at a mile. And I took a horse that I thought ran really well here at Keeneland last fall. Got beat by Reina de Batteria, and they both went on to the Breeders' Cup race. Quality Rocks. There's a strong second-place finish in the race here at Keeneland, and that was her first start for Bill Mott. And then she had a bad post, especially on the turf out there at Santa Anita. So just kind of draw a line through that. And off the layoff, certainly that's usually not a negative for a Mott horse. So I like Quality Rocks in the Sweetest Chant, and I'm going to use her with Consumer Credit, the 7, and the 5, Old Fashioned Gal. What about you?
Consumer Credit is going to be my top choice. Chad Brown trained coming in here off a win last time at Gulfstream Park West in the wait a while, and she did so very well. So going to go this mile distance again, which she's done very well. Really like how she performed last time out. And then I'm going to look at Old Fashioned Gal as well. Has done everything right out in California. So Mark Cassey brings her back over here, so I think she'll do well. And then Grand Motion brings in Miss Temple City, who's looking for her 3rd straight win. And she did, in the stretch run of her last race, which was an optional claiming, she just bowled her way to the front and then took over and just ran away with it. So if she can keep improving and bump her numbers up a little bit more, I think she can take home part of this as well. So Consumer Credit with Old Fashioned Gal and Miss Temple City for me here.
9th race is the Grade 2 Holy Bull for 3-year-olds at a mile and a 16th. And I will remind folks that this is our Keeneland Select Race of the Week that we do on the video that we tweet out each week. Katie Gensler and I pick one race, and we set it out on the Keeneland Select Twitter account. So make sure that you're following at Keeneland Select to get those picks. We were 1-2 in the race at the fairgrounds last week for an exacta that paid in excess of $100. So this week we're focusing on the Holy Bull. Who do you like there?
In this, I'm actually going for the cross center of Bluegrass Singer. I think this horse can look very dangerous on the lead. And, with a trainer that's going back and forth and is sort of leaning towards another race, I've got to think that this, with Gulfstream Park being so front-running, kind of heavy, I think he can get out there. And he was very impressive in the Mucho Macho Man where he actually ran his second quarter much quicker than his first quarter, and just ran away with it. Now he was kind of shortening up at the end, so the extra 16th is worrisome. But I think with the bullet work he had on January 18th, I think he's feeling good. So I'm going to take him on top. You have to take a look at Upstart. He's obviously one of the classier horses of this bunch, as well as Frosted, who finished a really good, actually looked like a winning run in the Remsen back in November. And then the horse that really intrigues me is First Down. He's making his third start. Really, did well in his maiden to win first time out, and then just threw in a clunker in the Nashua. So adds Lasix, and I think this is going to help him out quite a bit. So I'm going to take Bluegrass Singer on top and use those three, Frosted, Upstart, and First Down, in exacta and tri-plays.
Upstart is who I went with, the 8. The 102 buyer that he had 2 starts back up in New York is the best in the field. Had a horrible post in the Breeders' Cup race and ran well to get third. And I like the work pattern coming up to this race. It's the first start off a layoff, and this is a horse that obviously I think they have Derby aspirations for. So he didn't have to be at his best today. So that's always a little bit of a concern. If the price were to get too low on him, I'd look elsewhere. But for the pick. For me, just on who I think's the most likely winner, I'm going to go with Upstart. Use him with Frosted, one of the ones you mentioned. Keen Ice for Dale Romans. I know that's one, and talking to Dale last fall, I know that's one he's really high on. Fromento, I thought ran a nice race to break his maiden at Keeneland in the fall for Nick Zito, and love to see Zito get back on the Derby trail with this one, who I don't think is probably ready to beat these kind, but just I think Zito's looking for him to move forward. So I would throw him in there for a price. And then the 5, Juan and Bina, I might throw, if I went one deeper, I'd include that one. But Upstart's going to be the key horse for me in the Holy Bull. 10th race is the Grade 2 Forward Gal for 3-year-old fillies at 7 furlongs. Might see a future Kentucky Oaks or Ashland Stakes winner in here. You've got Taylor S., who ran really well here in Kentucky for Romans last year. You got Enchantress for Pletcher, who won at Keeneland. Where did you go in the Forward Gal?
Well, I kind of went back and forth between two, the Sedur and then Enchantress. Enchantress I'm putting on top, mostly because of her last start. She broke her maiden first time out, came back and attempted the Grade 3 at Aqueduct, and just threw in a clunker. So I'm just putting a line straight through that. It just didn't seem like she was into the race at all. And then she comes back in this optional claiming back in December and just annihilates this field. So I'm going to stick with her based on that move alone. And I might actually single her in some plays and with her. But Sedur, coming in from Jerry Hollendorfer's barn, from Santa Anita, she was still running at the end, so I think the 7 furlongs will be no problem for her at all. So I think she could, she's going to be on the lead. Enchantress is probably going to be right off her flank. So I think those two, it's really going to come down between those two. Skip-a-Loot on the far outside is interesting, running second to Take Charge Brandy, the 2-year-old champ, in the Delta Down Princess. I think she has a good chance. And then this Akati Station that won the Old Hat, not throwing up the best numbers compared to some of these, but she's still improving in each and every start. So I think she's another one to take into consideration in this field. But Enchantress, for me, on top in this one.
I'm probably going against my better judgment and not picking Enchantress, because that was my first inclination. I've taken Skip-a-Loot, and I'm getting a little bit seduced by what I think will be a nice price in here on a good filly. Last race was her best. You mentioned she was just beaten by Take Charge Brandy. She's turning back from a mile, and I guess the thing that cinched it for me is Castellano's really riding well, and he took the mount on this one. I think he's ridden her once before. So I'm going Skip-a-Loot, and I'm going to box her in exactas with Enchantress and then also with Taylor S. But if I'm spreading, I would want, in a horizontal wager, I would definitely throw in Enchantress as well, because I think she's most definitely the one to beat. Keeneland Select, everybody needs to keep their accounts funded, Jonathan, because you never know when you'll have a good opportunity, and it's going to get exciting now as we start getting closer to the Keeneland Spring Meet and then the Derby.
Exactly, and don't forget that you can always do this on the mobile site, which is m.keenelandselect.com. You can fund your accounts and then play the races on the go, too. So.
Yeah, and a lot of sources out there where you can get the video of races, and a lot of times when I'm traveling on the weekends these days, I can catch catch a big race on the weekend anywhere in the country. Best of luck to everybody with your picks this weekend. We'll be back next week with another set of selections for the Saturday Stakes races here on the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com.